Hi guys, welcome to this event. I really hope everyone is well. Before we start, I just want to say a quick word about O20. We are a student party that organizes the events, but also we also run for candidacy in many student councils. So if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to us on Instagram or on email. Yeah, thank you for coming again, and I sincerely hope you enjoyed the event.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for everyone being here today. We're very excited to host our third Women in Power event. So today we're going to do it again like the last time. It's going to be a panel slide discussion. So we will spend approximately 1 hour talking about selected topics. And at the end, we will turn to the audience for questions. So if you have any, it would be great if you can hold them until the end. And other than that, we would just like everyone to stay muted, keep their cameras on, and yeah, we hope you enjoy today. Julia, do you want to quickly introduce yourself and then we can start?
Hi everyone, I'm Julia. I'm a second year bachelor student in political science and I'm co-hosting the event with Caroline. So very excited to learn more with you about Tessa and Laura's journeys.
Yeah, and I'm Caroline. I'm a psychology student and a part of O20. Very happy to get the opportunity today to ask Tessa and Laura all of our questions. And yeah, I think then we can start off. Tessa, we would like to invite you now to present yourself to the audience. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Of course, yeah. So everyone, nice to meet you. Thanks for showing up, and thanks to O20 for having us. I think so. I'm Dutch, but the majority of my life I've spent abroad. My dad worked for Shell, so I was born in the UK. We moved around a bunch, and then I did my high school in the Netherlands, where in Arnhem, and after that I moved to Amsterdam, where I studied economics at the UvA. It was in high school, probably when I was about 16, when our economics teacher asked us if we could do if we could write a business plan, and that's kind of when I caught the entrepreneur bug. I kind of knew I wanted to start my own business at a certain point, but I wasn't quite ready. I didn't have the skills yet, I thought. Studied economics and then got in touch with a guy named Fabrice Grinda, and he was a super angel, which meant that he was very wealthy and that he invested his money in startups. And I proposed to him, I said, I'll come and help you for free if you teach me how to invest in startups. And that went well. So I moved to Dominican Republic, where he was living for tax reasons. And I joined him back there in 2015. That went well. And after a few months, he was like, okay, you can get a salary now and you can work from New York, where he was starting a venture capital firm. And venture capital firms take a lot of risk, and then they invest capital in return for equity, for shares of a company. And it was a great learning school for me to learn about a lot of different types of business models, meet a lot of investors, meet a lot of great entrepreneurs. And after having done that for 2 years in New York, I moved to Toronto, where I started my first business in real estate. And pretty soon after, like 9 months, we raised a little bit of money, but I realized okay, I'm not a real estate entrepreneur. I wanted to do something else. So I moved to San Francisco. And for the last 2 years in San Francisco, I had been building a food business, a protein bar business that was really focused on people following the keto diet, which is a great diet for people that are diabetic, and which is a huge problem in the US. So did that for the last 2 years. And now I'm back in the Netherlands because our business got a big hit from the pandemic. So now I'm kind of thinking through what's next, and I'm supporting Laura in her amazing business. Laura, stage is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Tessa. So I also just start briefly with my past. So I am originally from Luxembourg, but my dad is Italian, hence the name. And I came to the Netherlands to study in 2012. I studied in Rotterdam, International Business Administration, and I never really planned to stay in the Netherlands, but then things always happen differently than you plan. So when I did my master's, I met my now co-founder Diederik, and he had back then the idea to start a VC, so venture capital fund, that would invest in refugees that started an innovative business. And then when he started to look at the landscape, he just realized that there are not that many interesting businesses that you can invest in. So the idea came up, how about we help businesses and entrepreneurs to actually get there? And that's when the idea of the incubator was born. And so for the past 3 years, I work on Forward Incubator every single day. And our main mission is to help people with a refugee background to start, grow, and fund their businesses. And yeah, I'm excited to be tonight with all of you and looking forward to interesting discussions and questions. Thanks.
Yeah, we really do too. You have such fascinating stories. So how did you two meet? Could you tell the audience?
Laura, I think that's to you.
Yeah, so actually Tessa's brother, Casper, he works at Forward Incubator. So I think this summer he said to me, oh, my sister is back from the US. She came back from San Francisco. You should meet. And Tessa and I met actually inside a coffee place, which now seems like a faraway dream. But we met and we just had a really nice talk. And then Tessa joined at Forward Incubator as a coach, because I think one of our key success factors is that we match every newcomer with a business coach. And so Tessa was a dedicated business coach for one entrepreneur over the past 4 months. And so that's how we met.
Well, thank you for answering that question. And then my first question is to you, Laura. You've already told us a bit about Forward Incubator. Can you tell us a bit about your role in your company?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my title is managing director, but that's of course a big title. If we are quite small. We are with 8 people. But so that means that I am the glue that keeps it all together, I would say, and that also pushes towards achieving goals, and that we have a strategy and the strategy is executed, but also a lot of motivating the team. I think especially now with COVID, it's really important that you're just also, you feel connected and that you have a sense of purpose together. And that's what I do. It's a bit blue, but
so there is a lot of different type of entrepreneurship. And what exactly attracted you to go into the social area of that?
I fell into it. I grew up, my parents are very socially involved. They always work in the community on the weekends, after work for free. They're in the choir, they're super involved. And I just grew up that it's important to give back, and that success is not measured by financial status. I'm from Luxembourg, so I grew up with a lot of people with a lot of money around me, and you just see that money does not make you that happy. So I think that also made the decision kind of easy for me to do this, because I knew that money is not like a goal in itself. Of course, it's really nice if you can go on trips and have the freedom, but for the rest, I don't really look into that. I think I would also not consider myself necessarily a social entrepreneur, because I think, I wrote my master thesis about it, right? Social is a very hard to define word. What does social actually mean? And also what is social is often defined by the elite. So I just go with entrepreneur, and it was really by chance. I met Diederik, we got along super well. We started working on this first as a project and also more like a student organization. So just involving student consultants to help the refugees with their business. And now it's a real organization, and it all really happened very organically.
Yeah, I can tell. And I can also tell that you really stand, of course, behind the goal of Forward Incubator. And that's always really great to see, especially now in times where kind of we all have to stick together to achieve a common goal.
Yeah, I think that's, if that was a question.
No, but feel free to respond always.
No, but I think just a Forward Incubator kind of shows you that a lot of ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things together. So I don't think that Diedrich or I are like special anyway, but we just said, okay, there's a lot of power in community and in bringing people together and in making diversity actually work. Because I guess all of you at the moment at uni, you talk a lot about diversity, but what is diversity actually? And I think that is something that we see in its purest and most beautiful form at Forward, is to have people from all different walks of life just coming together to get something done. And that's really motivating to see.
And so, Tessa, you've worked in profit-oriented entrepreneurship, if we can say it like that. How is it different? Like, can you explain how you see the difference between the two?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, when we were investing, there were often two types of entrepreneurs. You had the, opportunity-driven founders and the mission-driven founders. And I think often, like, both can be very successful, but I often have more respect for the mission-driven entrepreneurs, because the opportunity-driven entrepreneurs could be like, okay, hey, I see this, there's an issue with e-commerce and how people pay online, so let's start building this software. And they really enjoy the building, but they don't, and maybe there are also a mission behind, enabling people to earn money online, but often it's mostly opportunity. And then there's the mission-driven founders that really believe in like solving a problem for humanity, and I prefer to put my money behind those people, because I think that when things get gritty and tough, and when you start a business, they will get tough. I think those founders can really tap into, why they started doing this. And from my own experience, I started two businesses from opportunity, and both businesses, like, they didn't fail, but they're not around anymore. And I had so many great learnings from that. But now I'm really looking for my next idea to be more aligned with missions I care about. I think you just have a longer breath to go at problems that you face, because you're going to face a lot of problems as a business owner and a founder. So yeah, that's my view.
Okay, since you both already talked a bit about your personal experience, I have a question to both of you. Keeping your younger self in mind, your experience, your uni life, were you always driven towards becoming a woman in power? Maybe Laura, you can go first.
I never thought about it like that. Like, my parents, they were always very scared that I was too outspoken. Like, they are very conservative. So they always told me, like, be quiet, like, don't put up such a show. And I was very outspoken. And sometimes I was also taking into account like negative repercussions. I remember like one time I didn't go on a school trip because I really didn't like the teacher. And then everyone went to the beach for a week and I was sitting in another class studying. So I don't know if I was necessarily looking for power. I don't also now think that I have power necessarily. I think I just always wanted to achieve something and be proud of what I do on a daily basis. I don't really think about myself being in power.
Maybe I can rephrase it by more asking in a leadership position, because you are a co-founder of Forward Incubator. Do you think your past has a big influence on what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I think I was always the one in the group that kind of said how to do things. And I tried to sometimes not do it, but I get really, really nervous, like also in private settings. For example, this weekend, one of my best friends, it's her birthday. And I'm just like, okay, we need a cake, we need candles. You do this and you do that and you organize. It's just how I am. And I try to sometimes really be chill, and I can chill, but it's very hard. And so I think I naturally have a tendency to just lead. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, what is your take on that, Tessa?
Well, a lot of things that Laura is saying sound familiar, but because I really enjoy leading and taking ownership of things. But I also have to admit that, you know, my parents really influenced my desire to achieve something, you know, and I wouldn't say I'm a woman in power at the moment, but I think one of the things that I really missed when growing up was seeing strong female role models in my environment. My mom was a housewife, and she died pretty young. So she said to me, you know, she had 4 children. I was the oldest of 4 children, and she was like, make sure that you have a career, don't start too early with having babies, you know. And she really regretted not having had more than just, like, she had great 4 children, you know, but she regretted that. And I think I really took that, and made sure that, you know, I'm now 31 and I don't have children and I'm not married because I worked really hard the last few years. So there's also something to say about that. And then, yeah, my dad, he always really believed in me, so I think they fed my hunger for achievement. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think especially you talking about your mother being a housewife, I think there is a huge shift happening right now because especially also our generation, your guys' generation is more towards career driven than, you know, settling down very early, because now it's okay for women to achieve big and great things, while back then it really wasn't the case. Talking about entrepreneurship, when did you guys realize that this was the right thing for you? Was it in your early days, or was it when you started to study, or still later on? Tessa.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, I said it already briefly in the introduction. I remember writing that business plan, and I did it for a dog trimming salon. And like, we didn't even have a dog that needed trimming at the time. It was very random, but I saw this opportunity. I just really enjoyed using my left and my right brain. You know, one day you can be creative and think about the logo, but then the next day you can be, you know, think about the budget planning and thinking about how to make rent and what the pricing should be, and then you'll work on HR, like who to hire. And I really love the versatility of business. I think I'm a true jack of all trades, you know, just such a generalist. And I love switching between it. I think that's my strength, even though I sometimes get a little bit down on not having a specialism. Yeah, I think I love being creative, but then also analytical. And I think the freedom that entrepreneurship allows you, not only in the way you know, use your time, but also in the way you, like, the work you do is something that I really love, and that I discovered when I was like 16.
Yeah, so you would say it's definitely the freedom of, you know, choosing what you want to do, but also the different things. You don't just always go into the office and do the same things over and over again. You have a lot of diversity in what you do.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, there's a lot of downsides to entrepreneurship too. You know, like, it sounds so rock star and cool, and you have all this freedom, but yeah, I can talk about those later on.
Yeah, we definitely have a part to the challenges as well. How about you, Laura? How do you see that? When did you know that entrepreneurship is what you want to pursue?
I think compared to Tess, for me, was quite late. So I did a very corporate master in Rotterdam. It's called International Management SAMS. And everyone wants to go either into strategy consulting or into like big corporates. And so, you know, it's like the parrot in the Dalmatian movie that thinks he's also a Dalmatian because he only sees Dalmatian. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's you guys are too young. But so this parrot thinks he is a Dalmatian because that's all he sees. So I was also like, okay, like, I want to go into strategy consulting. And I applied for McKinsey and BCG, and I did the interviews, and I went to like their crazy 4 days training where they, you know, feed you well, and it's super nice. But then when I started to work on Forward Incubator, I was like, why would I leave this? And I think one of the biggest narratives in my head was also like, okay, all these corporates, they will still be there, right? In 5, in 10 years. I mean, hopefully some not, but this opportunity to do something that has real impact and that I have the freedom to also develop myself the way I want might not come again. So that's when it clicked, but I was already working on it when it clicked. So in the very beginning, when I started it, I was like, okay, is this maybe just a project that I do after I graduate? Only after a while, I was like, okay, this could really be it. You know, I love this so much. Why would I stop doing this? So yeah, it took me a while.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that as well myself. I think sometimes, of course, you can know already, I don't know, when you're 10 years old, what you want to do in the future. But then at the same time, it takes some time to, figure out yourself and really see, is that really what I want to pursue, or is it just a temporary thing? Yeah, so I think, Julia.
Yeah, just before we dive into your everyday life looks like right now, I have one last question for you, Tessa. What would you say are the biggest differences? Because you've worked in the US and in Europe as an entrepreneur, and so what would you say are the biggest differences that you felt?
Yeah, so I remember when I was living in San Francisco, there's like this community of, Dutch entrepreneurs. And sometimes Rabobank, one of the big Dutch banks, would fly their customers over to San Francisco for like an inspiration trip. And we sit down for dinner with these guys, and they'd all just be like these business owners in the Netherlands. And we talk about about our businesses. And I think the biggest difference between their business and my businesses were the availability of cash, of money, of capital. There is so much money, like of a whole different magnitude in the States. So I raised $500,000 based on my vision for the company and a little beta test of literally selling my bars on the street. And so with that, like being able to sell it was able for me to raise that money. Whereas when I was talking with the entrepreneurs here, they were just like, they had a profitable business unit, and then they said, okay, then if we want to launch a new business unit, we need to use that profit every week and like save it, and then maybe at a certain point we can launch. And so it just like took them way longer to build way healthier businesses, right? Because the fundamentals of the business, the economics need to work for that business to work. Whereas in Silicon Valley, you can just get money and go at it, and failure is celebrated, which is really nice. And it allowed me to do a lot of and try a lot of new things. But I think, being an entrepreneur here is going to be a lot harder for me than in the States, because the capital is just a little bit scarcer.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also really depending on the size of the two countries as well. I think the Netherlands, being rather small compared to the US, has a huge influence on that as well. So now that we talked about your guys' past, we would like to have a few questions about your present. And I would like to start off with Laura. Can you tell us a bit, what is a day like in your shoes? Maybe even talking about your past week.
Well, the past week is still very short. So yesterday I went to the office, which is nice. Try to go once to twice a week to the office in Amsterdam. So I biked there, and then there are some people in the team at the moment are coming in. Like, we're not saying you have to come, just people that feel comfortable. And then on Mondays, we always have like a big Monday morning meeting where we align all together for the week. In general, I have a lot of just meetings trying to attract new partners to Forward, and experts managing our board. So we have a supervisory board and an advisory board, which sounds quite strict given our size, but as a foundation in the Netherlands, you need to be managed like that. And then also with the team, today was really nice. We had the last workshop of our incubator. So it was the graduation, everyone received their diploma, and I was there. So it's very diverse. Every day is different. The only thing that is the same, that every day at 9 to 9:30 we check in as a team in a daily huddle, where everyone goes over good news, their priorities for the day, and I think it's really nice to stay connected and to not get how should I say? I feel like during COVID, a lot of teams, they just lose this sense of belonging because they do not have this chit chat in front of the coffee machine. So it's just really important to have these little moments where you are laughing with your team and just being together.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think the importance of just not talking about work, but with your colleagues is also something very, very important. And that also we as O20 are trying to do. It's not always about, what we're doing or the projects we have, but also our personal lives. So from what I know that you had last week, the demo day, can you tell us a bit more about that? What does it entail?
Yeah, so we designed the programs as such that at the end of each program, we have a big demo day. So demo for demonstration, where all the entrepreneurs will pitch their business and what they want to do next. So some do an investor pitch because they need to raise money, and others more like a sales pitch or like their story because they are not ready to raise or don't need it. So that was last Thursday. We had 16 really great pitches, if I can say so myself, and close to 400 attendees. And it was just really nice to see all of the entrepreneurs pitch and the support from the audience, and also to attract so many people, because there is also a certain fatigue at the moment with all of these online events. So it was great to get the heartbeat up and to show the warmth that we have as an organization.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question, and I'll give it on to Julia.
So you both built companies from the ground up. Tessa, you've already walked us through it a bit, but could you really walk us through the process of building a company from zero to grown up or cruise?
Yeah. I think so as I said, I knew I wanted to start a business, but I wasn't quite sure what kind of business. And I think maybe a lot of people are in that position where they're like, oh, the founder journey sounds so cool, and maybe there's a lot of money to be made. And so I really, in the beginning, I went through the options of like my ideas pretty meticulously with a lot of like frameworks that I had learned from venture capital, because in venture capital, you look at an industry and you're like, okay, is this industry growing? How are the unit economics? Does it make money? Is there like, what's the competitive landscape like? And I pretty much found out that those formats or structures of assessing a business opportunity was kind of paralyzing, because it was for me like I would have never started a protein bar company because there were already so many protein bar companies, but kind of letting go of all those voices of like maybe your risk averse parents that are saying like, go get a job, and this already exists, or this should already exist, and if it doesn't exist, it's probably for a reason. All those things, kind of like let that go and start testing small. You don't have to build a full website. You can just build a landing page, or you don't have to, start raising money already. You can probably already do some like testing for free or low money or low cost with people in your environment. So I think that's one of the first things that's really important. Like trust your gut and test it out on a small. There's like a startup is never going to be exactly how you think it's going to be in the beginning. Just like Laura said in her introduction, you test, then you iterate, then you test, then you iterate, then you test, and then at a certain point, like what I really enjoyed is like take a lot of pictures along the way so you don't forget all the things that you've done. And later on, when you maybe raise some capital from people, maybe from your friends and family, maybe from a bank, maybe from a venture capital firm or an angel, you can also show them how scrappy you were testing in the beginning, right? Like that picture of me selling with a t-shirt of like low carb cookies on the street, that really gained a lot of confidence from my investors, thinking, like, oh, this girl's a hustler, she's going to go out of her comfort zone, she's a go-getter, whatever, so those are some things that I remember from the first few like years from my journeys.
Yeah, I really like the idea. Well, the picture of the t-shirt. The Laura, you want to add as well on the process of building up company?
Yeah, sure. So when we started, we were all three. So we were with the three of us. David now left. He's now in Kenya, and he is there involved in a startup. So in the beginning, the three of us, I just remember us biking all the time, everywhere, trying to have meetings. We would have meetings with like big corporates like Philips or Mazars, and then we would just go in and pitch what we would like to do to help refugees to build businesses. So and then very early on we got such positive response, and we started very small. So at first we just invited a couple of newcomers for one Saturday afternoon to UvA. And then we had a lot of student consultants. Well, back then there was not this term student consultant, they were just students and newcomers working for one afternoon on a business idea. And then we did some presentations at the end. And neither Diedrich or I were very versed also in the startup lingo. Like our pitch events were always called pitch events. We only started to call them demo day after a year. And then after that, we said, okay, this went really well. And we started a crowdfunding campaign, and then we raised 5,000 euros. And then with that money, we organized a first startup weekend. So 3 days with newcomers. And then we started to attract business coaches, so people like Tessa, and also student consultants. And then again, after that, we said, okay, guys, this is so great. Let's apply for more funding. And then we raised 80,000 euros. And then we executed a 4-month program. So it was really step by step, getting bigger and bigger. And now for 2021, we have a budget of around like 500,000. So we went from really nothing, also not having a salary for the first 6 months, to now, building a little organization. But sometimes I really miss these early days, because there was nothing to lose and everything to gain. Whereas now you become a bit more careful, and you are less, sometimes you just become a bit more stuck, because you have just a lot of experiences that shaped you already. And in the beginning, we were so carefree. It was really nice.
And you mentioned friends, family. Do you think a supportive network system, like following you, or at least accompanying you on this journey, is really important? Or like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't have a salary for the first 6 months, right? So my parents had to keep on supporting me. And I remember my dad saying like, oh my God, I thought you studied business, you're going to get a job and now you do this. So it was also a struggle at home, but I think, at the end, my parents supported me, and I'm very grateful for that. But you definitely need that. So I know I also talk from a very privileged point of view that I could do this, and have the support of my parents.
Yeah, it could mean I also meant that maybe emotional or like friendly support.
Yeah. I mean, I can talk on the emotional part, because I did the business by myself, and that's one of my major learnings, is that this next business, it needs to be like with a co-founder, because and I remember in the beginning people telling me, so this is one of my big learnings, everybody, write this down. If you're starting a business, do it together with somebody that you enjoy working with. People talk about are they complementary? And of course it's great if they're complementary, but you just need someone to celebrate the wins with. And when you feel down, which you're going to feel, every week once, that other person can pick you up, and so having a fun team, it's all about, in this entrepreneur journey, the way I started it was like, okay, I have a little bit of savings. If I burn through all my savings and I have to move back to the Netherlands and I'll have to live with my dad and get a job at the Albert Heijn, I'm okay with that. And so being okay with this failure was very important. But then yeah, the journey, it's about enjoying that journey. And I think I would have enjoyed the journey a lot more had I done it together with a great group of people, you know. So yeah, that's definitely a big learning for me. And that support network that you're talking about, Julia, is key.
I do have one more question about the co-founder structure. How do you separate the tasks or the roles in that relationship, especially maybe if it's not, or if it is a friend?
Yeah, for us, it was interesting because the dynamic was such that David and Diederik, two Dutch guys that knew each other for a long time, they lived together, they were in a rowing club together, and they were very, let's say, arrogant in a way. And then I joined, so I was a bit the outsider at time because, you know, I am not Dutch, and I'm a woman, and I'm a bit less I was just less self-confident than them. Like, I'm always looking to learn, and I'm not so sure that the way I do it is the best way to do it. So it was a really interesting dynamic in the beginning. And I think we didn't really have a clear division of roles even after 1 year. It was just like, okay, this is a bucket of tasks. You do this, you do this, you do this. And we tried to really play to our strengths. So David was a really good public speaker and he loved that. So he did all of that. Diederik is great when it comes to strategy and analytics, and he did all of that. I'm really good at executing things and getting stuff done and having an overview. So it was all, I'm so lucky because it was really all naturally happening. And we were complete crooks and new, and we didn't know what we were doing, but somewhat it works. And I think we didn't overthink it really. And that was so great in the beginning.
So you've both talked about the fear, I guess, or maybe that's just my interpretation of failing. How do you deal with that? Because starting an entrepreneurship, starting an organization, there's always a chance of what if it doesn't work out? How do you deal with that uncertainty? Tessa?
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, like you have to kind of define what failure would mean, or like when you would stop. For example, I have a friend, she's starting a clothing company, and in clothing you have to really do a lot of upfront investments because you have to have like pattern designers, and you have to get like different types of, you know, fabrics from all over the world and maybe visit there. And there's just, and if you need a bunch of SKUs, you'll have to order like the size 32, 40, 34, etc. So there's a lot of cost up front. And I just saw her sinking so much money into the business, you know, and I think maybe defining like, okay, how far you'll go and to what extent you do that, I think is quite important. But and then to what I said earlier, you know, like being okay with this failure, because it's, you know, in all honesty, 95% of the businesses do fail, you know, and so you need to also really love this journey. And even if they fail, which, for example, like my businesses didn't, like, yeah, I wouldn't call them failure, because that's also what another entrepreneur told me. It's, you know, it's like, don't call it failure, because you have to reframe it as like a learning experience, you know. So I try to do that. Yeah, I've learned so much doing those. And so being okay with it not working out is something that you have to calculate the risk for, and be okay with that, you know.
Yeah, how about you, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really nice because we did this straight out of uni, right? So there was not that much to lose because we didn't have like a mortgage to pay. We were not in relationships where the partner expected that much of us, although that became a problem for me at one point, because my ex-boyfriend, he said, okay, I'm going to go to Berlin, you coming with me? And then I said, no, I want to stay here. So that also led to us breaking up. But so that I saw as a failure in a way, that I couldn't maintain that. And I also think that I saw myself in the beginning a bit as a failure, because my entire environment was like, why are you doing this? Like, no one really understood that, right? So because when I received, for example, I received an offer from McKinsey, and then everyone was like, okay, you're going to take it, right? And I'm like, I don't think so. And everyone thought, okay, she's crazy. So I felt in the beginning like I had failed already my environment. So now 3 years later, to see the success that we are having, you know, we work with over 400 entrepreneurs, over 50 now started their own business. We as a company raised, you know, a lot of money. So it's just, I don't know, it's really nice. I didn't plan for it. I was just, I think I started in a way from minus on how everyone perceived what I was doing. So everything I'm doing now is like a success in a way.
Yeah, so what I'm getting is, of course, it's on a personal level as well, but also based on your environment. Like, it's important what they say. And I think what I can personally take out of it is more that failing, or let's call it failing, is more of a learning opportunity than actually a failing. Like, you have to make mistakes, and you learn out of these mistakes even more than, I guess, out of success. So I think that is really great to hear from both of you guys.
And so you just mentioned some personal decision that you had to make, but could you tell us about what are the most significant ones that you had to make, professional or personal decisions, in order to keep the business going or maybe start a new one?
Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I moved to San Francisco on a tourist visa. Yeah, I went there solo and by myself and single. And yeah, I think some of my friends, they knew, like, I've always wanted a family, and they were like, well, you're like 28 now. How are you going to meet someone over there? And they, I think, yeah, I think that was a big personal decision of like, no, I want to build on to continue building my career, and the whole family and finding someone becomes secondary. So that's a big one. And professional, yeah, I think professionally, maybe similar to Laura saying no to McKinsey. At the venture firm that I was working for in New York, the guy was like, what do you mean you're not continuing with us? You're on like partner track. And I, yeah, felt like saying no to that, and starting and taking a risk, yeah, was a big decision. However, in my gut feeling, you know, even though your environment doesn't really understand it, you know in your gut it's the right one. So it wasn't as difficult for me as it seemed, like for my family or something.
So Laura, you said that you transitioned directly from university life to professional, well, I mean, to business owner. But maybe Tessa, did you have many more steps in between, like from student to,
Yeah. So I worked for 2.5 years at a venture capital firm. And then after that, that's when I started my entrepreneurial journey. So I think there's no right or wrong, you know. I think the how do you say that? The going as you like, you knew very little, Laura, when you started the business right out of uni, but that was also kind of a blessing, right? Like, you didn't know how hard the problem was that you were attacking.
Yeah.
And so, but then on the other hand, I'm very happy that I had a few years of working experience, especially in that industry that I was working in, because it allowed me to understand how the investors would look at a startup and understand how to present myself. And one of the most important learnings that they gave me back then, and maybe it's a very American thing, but is like, fake it till you make it. I remember my boss there, he said after a few weeks, he was like, Tessa, let's sit down here for a sec. You know, the way you introduce yourself is way too junior, and we're not going to get deals that way. So you have to really like amp up your introduction and make you sound like you're like the best investor ever, and really believe in that. And in the beginning, you don't really believe in that introduction, and makes you feel, but after a while, you're like, okay, everybody's introducing themselves like they're some big shot. And I started doing that. And I think that really helped me, be an entrepreneur as well, because you have to, and I'm sure Laura had similar experiences when you went to Philips or the big companies when you were just out of college. You have to fake it till you make it a little bit.
Yeah, it was really, I don't know, like you kind of feel like all of these barriers that you have in your head and all of that hierarchy that you need to cross, at the end of the day, it's just like a construct, and you can break through it. Like you can write an email to whoever you want and they can invite you for a meeting. So I think sometimes in uni, we are too much trained in accepting how things are, and that is a very clear hierarchy that you need to follow. But it's not true. Like you can talk to everyone. And it was for me really mind-boggling when I saw, okay, we have a seat at the table with every company that we want to. And it was really exciting for us. And really, I can say that my mentality changed over the past 3 years. Before, I thought that, the world is a bit how it is. I was a bit cynical. And now I became way more idealistic, because I saw that we all as humans have a very strong internal locus of control. Like we can take ownership and we can change things if we step up and show up every day, So I that's what I really love about what I'm doing.
So a lot of it is inspirational from a lot of what you're talking about. So we would like to move on to the third part, which is very much about women and entrepreneurship in itself. So if you had to pick a woman who inspires you, who would it be? Maybe whoever wants to start.
A while ago, I read Samantha Power's autobiography. It's called The Education of an Idealist. It's the story of how she came. She was the former U.S. ambassador to the UN in Obama's second term. And it's just this wonderful story of, a woman that comes as an Irish immigrant when she's 9 and she has very little money. And then she, pursues this career that's very mission driven to the highest ranks in the US. And I found it a very inspirational story. There's also a lot of business entrepreneurs that are, Emily Weiss from Glossier in the US. You have Chiara Ferragni in Italy. You have Tyler Haney from Outdoor Voices. So there's Whitney Wolf from Bumble that recently IPO'd. So there's plenty of them, and I think it's very important to find those few role models and get obsessed and read. And I find that every time I read or listen to a podcast, it's a great way for me to start the day, because I kind of get inspired and motivated to work hard the rest of the day.
Dreams and goals driving you then for every day. Laura, do you feel the same?
So for me, my female role model is my aunt, my mom's sister, because when I look back to Luxembourg, I didn't have really women in my environment that were more successful than the men that they were in a relationship with. For example, my boyfriend in high school, his mom found out that the dad cheated on her. And she said to me, I'm not going to leave him because I cannot maintain this lifestyle. And that stuck with me forever. I was like, shit, like in Luxembourg, there's so many women that stay with their husbands because they themselves do not have a career and don't have the freedom to leave, in a way, because you don't want to scale back. It's really hard to scale back your standards of living. But my aunt, she is really, really successful. She's also an entrepreneur, has her own company. And she is a role model in certain ways, but then also in other ways, not at all. Because I think she just showed to me that money is just not something that is worth to work for, because she has a lot of it and she's not, and it doesn't make her happy. So that has also a very big influence on me. I think to be very honest, I think I would not have started or done Forward for as long as I do it now if not for my aunt showing me that financial financial remuneration actually is not that much. So I'm
Wow,
very
did you ever
thankful.
tell her?
Huh?
Did you tell her?
Yeah. I told her. Yeah. We go also on holidays together. Like, she's always supported and also spoiled me, and we have a very open relationship. We talk about everything. So yeah, it's really nice.
I really like it, the story. The women are still underrepresented though in C-suite, in the C-suite. So for those who don't know, the prestigious Cs, the CEOs, CIOs, and as well as in boardrooms. But what is it that, according to you, women's point of views can bring to the executive part of a business that men don't necessarily do? Tessa, maybe you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's very important that women get represented in those top models, in those top levels, for it to trickle down to the organization beneath there. And I remember when I was working at FJ Labs, the investment firm, there were 9 men on my team, and I was the only woman. And it was really hard for me to kind of break through and hire other women there, because in interviews, women just position themselves a little bit differently. They're less salesy, they're less confident sometimes, and so I think it's very important that that C-level, maybe there should be a quota. I go back and forth on that, but I think it's very important on that top level for it to trickle down into the society, and also, like the girls, younger girls, and the bottom levels of those companies, they need to see role models as well in the top. So yeah.
Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, so I have actually a really favorite quote by Simone de Beauvoir, and she says something: the point is not for women to take power out of hands, since that wouldn't change anything about the world, right? It's to destroy that notion of power, right? That toxic masculinity that we always talk about, that is very much linked to power. So I also don't think that women are better humans than men. I just think that women are less in powerful situations to behave wrongly. So I am in favor of a quota. I think women also have a right to fuck up and mess up. I think women are held up to like a stronger standard than men, just because there are less, and all the women that you see at the top really had to be twice as good as their male counterparts at the moment. So I just hope that in the future that changes. I know I was still raised a bit differently than my brother, and I'm 27. Like, my brother would come home from school with ripped pants, and it would be, oh, it's a boy. But if I would come home and my stuff would be ripped, my mom's like, oh, you don't take care of your clothes. So these things, they become ingrained in you, and I'm extremely nurturing, to a point that it's sometimes my empathy is really draining me. So I really hope that, for example, me as a mother, I don't raise my daughter differently than my son, or if they are non-binary, whatever, like that. I just raise them as humans and not according to gender roles.
Yeah, I think that is something very important, and I think the discussion about that is also coming up more now as well. So I think another thing that at least a lot of studies show is that men and women differ when it comes to leadership. Men tend to be more aggressive, more assertive, where women are seen more as you said, Laura, nurturing, caring. How would you describe your leadership style in Forward Incubator?
I think I'm a bit a chameleon with I think that different people need a different style. So I try to adapt that a bit and be a bit more like nurturing with some, whereas more pushing with others. I would say that generally I'm very honest and authentic, and just yeah, I just try to be who I am. Like, I know for a while I tried to boil down who I am to not step on other people's toes, but now I'm done with that, because it's really energy taking if you try to be someone that you're not. So I think yeah, just to be authentically myself is something, but I still work also on it. But I would say that that's my leadership style. But of course, I have days where I am very bad. So
I think we all have those days as well. I think so. You would say it's important to not have one consistent leadership style, but rather adapt to the people that are in your team. That's a lot more important than sticking to one thing as well.
And also what is happening externally, right? So for example, in a crisis, sometimes people just want someone to take all the decisions. So when COVID happened, I was like, okay, we do it like this, blah, 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 blah. So I just took all of these decisions. But then if things are going well, you can say, okay, you know, this is a real democracy. Everyone has an equal say. Let's discuss. But that does not work every day. Like, sometimes you just need to call the shots, and sometimes you can. So yeah, it's externally and internally driven how you adapt, or how I adapt.
Important to like figure out what is the situation right now and what do I do.
Yeah, can attest to that. I remember the business, my business had two sides, right? We had our manufacturing of the protein bars, where we had a lot of like line workers, blue collar labor, uneducated, and a high turnover, meaning that often, you know, people would leave for $1 higher salary somewhere else after a month, just like after we trained them. But then we, on the other side, we had our office side, where we would do like the R&D, the marketing, customers service, etc. And I noticed also that those two, you know, worker groups needed different leadership styles. You know, like the people on the line and the manufacturing, they needed very clear, very like they couldn't really work with a lot of autonomy. Whereas on the other side, people, often the white collar labor, enjoy getting more autonomy and ownership about certain roles, and yeah, there's more flexibility there. So I definitely can attest to what Laura just said.
Yeah, and that leads me kind of into my next question for you, Tessa. So you've worked in quite a lot of different countries, and for that reason, you were exposed to different cultures, different experiences, different people. What do you think are the most challenging barriers for women when they try to achieve a leadership or a powerful position in the business world? I remember in the beginning, you said that, of course, it's always important how women present themselves in an interview, but how do you think is it more when it comes to once they are accepted, like from that stage of time?
So you're asking what, sorry, can you
yeah, what are the, of course, what are the most challenging barriers when women try to achieve a leadership position? So once they are already, I guess, let's say in the business world, how does it start from there?
That's a tricky question for me. Let's see. I think, yeah, I think it's kind of tied to what I said earlier about the way women are perceived and by the people that are hiring them is very important that they recognize themselves. And so sometimes you'll find that women lack a certain confidence or presentation skills or sales skills to come across and bring across an idea. And that's kind of important. But I have to say, I haven't really climbed the ranks within a business, so I can't really attest it, like say something on that. I'm sorry.
No worries. Maybe Laura, what is your opinion on that?
I think that if you are strong as a woman, that it's very easy that people call you a bitch. Like I know that a lot of people think that sometimes about me, but I don't care. Like I'd rather be a bitch than a pushover. So I take it as a as a certificate for at least having a strong stance. But I think that you just see that sometimes how people react. And what I also had sometimes happen to me, if you are too nice, like too smiley and too friendly, that you then like receive texts like, oh, do you know, you want to get dinner and things like that. So sometimes it's a bit of fine line between being too stern and strict and being too flirty. So that's something I sometimes encounter. And I think it really helps at the moment with working remotely that men are a bit out of your personal space. And I'm also very happy that I don't need to kiss random men anymore, like you know, like this la bise in French. Like, I don't know, I personally don't like it to just kiss a bunch of strangers, but these are kind of things that I expected. So yeah.
So you talked about a few uncomfortable situations when it comes to men. How do you deal with that? I know that it can be quite intimidating as well.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's really nice that I had Diedrich and David next to me from the very start. So, you know, if I wouldn't like to deal with someone, then they would just take over that contact. I think for me specifically, what is tough at Forward Incubator, we work with a lot of volunteers. So it's not just a straight professional relationship. And then sometimes people feel like you owe them entertainment, you owe them a good time because they give their brain power to your organization. So those were sometimes conflicts that I encountered. So it really helped to talk to Diedrich and David about it, and then that they would do the next meeting, or sometimes also just, yeah. I think one time one of them said something. For me, it was really uncomfortable because I also sometimes feel guilty because the people do give a lot to Forward, you know. So I also want to be very nice and respectful, but yeah, I think now I would be a bit stronger and have a stronger stance on these things.
Yeah, I think it comes also with experience a lot, kind of finding like, because at the end it is a very fine line between what is still acceptable and what really is inappropriate. So I think it takes some time and also, I guess, confidence, you know, to really speak up about that and be confident in yourself as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And besides the bees has not been in like a thing for a year now, so hopefully it goes away forever. But have you heard any hopeful news or stories that has left you very hopeful for maybe like fully achieving gender equality in the world recently?
Well, I mean, I think Whitney Wolf bringing Bumble public was a great win. You know, the youngest self-made billionaire, but I think there's a lot of great news happening. I think the world is waking up to this inequality, and I was thinking when Laura was talking about, you know, some inappropriate behaviors that she experienced over there. But I honestly have to say that in San Francisco, which is also like a very woke place in the US, I didn't experience that much inappropriate behavior. It was worse in finance in New York. So I'm very hopeful about the future. I think it's a great time to be an entrepreneur, and especially a woman entrepreneur, because a lot of money and the people that are distributing the money are realizing that they haven't been doing a fair job for a while, and so they're going to overcompensate. And I think it's a really great opportunity for us women entrepreneurs to ride that wave, because it might, you know, become a little less momentous in a few years. So I'm very hopeful, and I'm very excited to start a new business again here in the Netherlands. And I think it's a great time to be a woman.
Great time to be a woman. So where do you see yourself, both of you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Laura?
Yeah, I would like to be a mom in 5 years. That's something that I think about. Like, it's a bit weird that I start to think about these things, but maybe also not, right? It's also just biological. So yeah, to be a mom, but also in terms of career, and I guess that's also what I should say, right? Because it's like Women in Power event. So in terms of career, either I would like to still be with Forward, but that Forward is in a lot of different countries, and that we are helping people all around the world to self-actualize and to really take ownership over their future. And if not that, I don't know, I would be open to do a lot of different things. I could also see myself as a COO of like a bigger startup and also for profit. I think it would be nice to experience that, because I don't have any real for profit experience. I mean, I did a lot of internships also for like funds and thing, but to really have a say in a for profit would be interesting. So let's see.
Yeah, for me, let's see, I'm currently really working through like what are some missions I care about, and I'd love to start a business again that is aligned with those missions. So I think I'll start a for-profit business, but that it has like a positive impact on the world. I would also love to be a mom. So that's yeah, something that I think a lot about. So there's that, we can be women in maternal power too, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think it kind of also stresses the importance of women in power again. We don't just need to do a career, we all can also have a family life and combine that, however hard that might seem. So before we open the floor to the audience to ask questions, I have one last question for both of you. What is your final advice for us? What is your advice maybe for young women who want to pursue entrepreneurship?
For me, it's as I said, like I've worked in many different industries, and I think my next gig will be in yet another one. And so I would tell everyone, don't worry too much about not understanding or an industry, or don't get demotivated about not knowing, because you start a business, you often, everybody, you're not an expert, we're not an expert, but and Elon Musk, when they asked him like, did you know anything about space, he was like, no, but I bought a few books, and then he started SpaceX, so I think don't get intimidated by an industry. Just start hacking at a problem, small tests, and that's my main giveaway. And get a co-founder.
Of course, very inspiring words from you. What's your take on that, Laura?
I think it's very important that if you want to be an entrepreneur, that you feel comfortable with executing, because the successful businesses are not the ones that there was a great idea. It's the one where the idea was greatly executed. So I think that's really important. And a lot of people are not ready to deal also with the rejection. So, as an entrepreneur, like you often really get punched in the face and you get rejected and people don't like what you do and you get negative feedback, and you always need to stand up again. And of course, also your business is way closer to you than you work for corporate, right? Like I really identify also as part of Forward, and the values at Forward are the values that, Diederik and I like created, and we try to live by those. So I think that is just something that you need to be ready to deal with. You are very vulnerable in a way. At least that's how I feel as an entrepreneur. So you need to be ready for that, and then just do it, just execute. And it's always better to take a small step and get feedback on it than to just sit in the ivory tower and think about the perfect plan. So that's really important. And also something that I personally learned, especially during COVID, is that it's so important to be honest to yourself and to look for that internal gratification and internal drive, because all of the external stuff can be taken from you. So I find it sometimes, it really hurts me when I see people, I see them lying to themselves and they say, oh, I want to do this, and it's not what they truly want, So I think it's so important that you're honest to yourself and kind of follow that inner voice, because that will guide you to find like your happy place. It sounds a bit cheesy, but I think it's really important to listen to yourself.
Yeah, I think so. Just to, I guess, summarize it, it would be, of course, staying true to yourself and to your values, but also not to get discouraged when something seems to be hard, or when it seems to be like, oh, I don't know anything, for example, about building up a business. You can learn it, you can buy books, there's the internet. So just, putting yourself out there and really trying it. And if you make mistakes, that's fine, but it's always important to still keep moving.
Yeah. Like progress is better than perfection. I think that's also really important.
That is better than perfect, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for answering our questions. And now if the others who are here right now have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. Julia, do you want to go for the first question?
Yeah, so we have one from David. Tessa, you mentioned in your introduction that you had the opportunity to learn from a super angel investor. Do you have any advice for students or young entrepreneurs looking for a mentor?
Yeah, I mean, the world, what Laura said, you can reach out to anyone. And definitely on Twitter, a lot of those smart people that you really think are inspiring, they're on Twitter, and you can actually directly send them something, so think about something smart, something catchy, and I think it's very easy to get in touch with people that you admire, and give them a good reason, and then an authentic and original way of asking them for help, and maybe also make it very low barrier. Like, can we sit down for 15 minutes to discuss, and then very specific, like this issue that I have, and I think you can help me because of Y, because of X. I mean, so I think that could be a good way.
So James is asking for both of you, how do you guys deal with conflicts in your team? Laura, if you can go first.
Yeah, so there's a difference if the conflict involves me or not. So if it doesn't involve me, I just put the people that have the conflict together in a room, because I've also seen in the past that people try to involve me in the conflict so that I manage it, but people just need to talk it out. Like, I don't want to talk on X behalf. So, and I have a very direct approach to deal with it. I don't want to have any secrets or hide anything. So just put it all out there. And sometimes it helps so much to just spell out the implicit. So for example, if the mood is low, I just say, oh, the mood is really low today. What's going on? And just laughing about it and not making things awkward, because I think the Queen once said that with problems, just push them to the side, they will solve themselves, or they become a national crisis, and then you need focus on it. So I really don't agree with that. Every time I see that something is not going well, I'm like, hello, something's not going well, what's the problem? And I always want to understand it. I know I'm too much also, but I just want to understand. And I try to not blame people. I just ask, why is this happening? What's the problem? And also with people, I try in the team that people take accountability for their mistakes, because it's not about placing blame, it's to avoid these mistakes in the future. So this is kind of my credo that I preach every day when people are like, no, but he said this and I did that. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I can attest to what you just said, is that there's often a bigger learning in these conflicts. I remember having an issue in the manufacturing facility where some employee had offended the other person, and it was actually quite a kind of a racist remark. And so I thought, okay, this is a perfect learning opportunity for me to write down like the company values and really discuss those company values in advance with every entrepreneur, every employee. Like, what are conversations that are acceptable in the manufacturing facility or in the work time, and what are not. And so that and other things were maybe an org chart that we had to make, because it was people were doing the same thing, and there was like conflict on who was the end responsible. So yeah, there's often a bigger lesson in these conflicts.
Thank you. Ria has a question for Laura. You mentioned that your parents supported you financially. Did you feel any pressure to deliver quickly? Is there any advice you could give to entrepreneurs that are starting out and have this kind of pressure on them?
Mm, yeah, I mean, with my parents, I felt in a way like I never failed one exam in my life. They never had to worry about me. So I also felt like, okay, I'm really not a problem child. Please give me these 6 months. So I didn't feel that pressured, maybe a bit of entitlement that, they are my parents and they need to support me, which is bad, but, that's how I felt back then. I think what is good is to have a plan B kind, just like, okay, if this does not work out, I can do this. And also, I know from my heart of hearts that I would be willing to do any job. Like, I don't think I'm too good to do anything. I'm a horrible driver, so I could not do Uber, but I would do everything. So I think that is also kind of the spirit, like, if I really fail, then I'm just gonna, provide for myself. So I think to have this plan B and not to feel too good for any job is a good and healthy mindset.
Thank you.
There is another question again towards Laura. I would be interested in joining Forward Incubator as a student consultant. Are there any requirements for that? Is that open to any university student?
Yes, so I put the link in the chat. It's open for university students. At the moment, we are completely full for spring. We had over 120 applications, but we are open for fall, and we also start potentially an accelerator program, if I get the headspace for it, where we would work with a bit more advanced businesses. So just fill out the application and then we will get back to you. So there is a slight chance that we still do something before summer.
A question from Daria. Yeah, Daria. To what extent do you think social entrepreneurship or giving back to the community is important in supporting other entrepreneurs? Maybe Tessa?
I think it kind of ties into a question that I think Victoria is asking later on about, being in touch with other entrepreneurs and supporting that community. And I think what you put in, you'll also get out. I really believe in that. And I organized a lot of dinners for other founders. And that was really, it gave me a lot of, how do you say that? Like practical things that I could be working on, but it also opened the door for having conversations when I felt low, and not having co-founders and being able to call them. So yeah, I think having a community of people around you and giving back to that community is very helpful, and for the community and for yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. There is a lot of more questions. I hope we get them done in time. But so there is another question towards Laura. I'm under the impression that your company offers a social service. So I'm wondering, how do you balance social impact and profit, the financial viability of your business?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one because we are a foundation, so in Dutch stichting, so we are completely dependent on grants and sponsorships. So I don't really need to worry about profit at all, which is not always good because as a for-profit business, you have an output, your production, service or good, right? And then you sell that and you get money for it. But at Forward, we are measured on metrics like entrepreneurs finishing the program, how much money these entrepreneurs raise, how many leave social welfare. All of these metrics is not a direct line, right? So I can work as hard as I want, but it doesn't ensure that the people leave social support. It doesn't ensure that these businesses raise funding. So that makes it kind of tough. And of course, we also need to do continuous fundraising with social funds and corporates. And at times that is just really tiring to continuously raise money, and you do not really raise for the concrete work that you do, right? Because we don't get paid for the concrete work that we do. So it's a bit more complex. But with COVID, it was great to not worry about my income at all. The budget was already taken care of.
Sumida has another question. He says, listening to you guys was so empowering and insightful. Can you tell me how important is emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills while dealing or shifting to entrepreneurial scenarios?
Yeah, I think as a founder and CEO, but probably also as a managing director, but as leadership in a startup, it's incredibly important to do two things. One is to make sure that the company does not run out of money. And the second thing is to hire great people and to be a good salesperson and be able to bring your vision across. And for you to effectively bring that vision across, it may be to your customers, it may be to employees, it may be to investors or other stakeholders. You need to be able to see who is your audience, and for that, I think emotional intelligence is incredibly important to shift into a language that resonates with your audience. So those two things, like not running out of money and making sure that you have enough runway and that you're spending properly, and that you're able to sell yourself and your vision and your company.
I also just think that like emotional intelligence, it's something, of course, that is also hard to learn, and interpersonal skills, but you can get it with, just experience and being open and also really caring about the other person that you're talking to. And I always say to the team, like, don't listen to react, but listen to understand. And I think that is already kind of helping a lot of people, because a lot of people just listen to get back and say, reply.
That's another very good mantra to follow. And one last question, Caroline.
The last question is towards Tessa, and talking about co-founding a company with someone else. Do you have any advice on how to find the right people to start off with, and any advice on what to look for in those people?
I mean, you'll find a lot of lists online of like what would be like great co-founder. It really depends, material, but I can't really give offhand because I don't know you. I don't know what your strengths are and what kind of person you enjoy working with. But to find someone that is passionate about the vision and the mission that your startup is in, you could look at other companies that are in that space. You can look at other investors that invested in that space and really get to know that space and talk with people that are active in that. So I think that's a really great way to start talking. But I think, for example, it's obviously, you're right, it's obviously difficult and a bit random to share it with strangers. I think this is one of the core things that people are afraid of like sharing their idea with strangers and with people around them. And I don't think you have to do that unless you're like some biotech entrepreneur that has like this amazing patented technology or something, but you can talk about it, because as Laura said, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. So talk about it, pick people's brains. People will give you risks that you hadn't thought about, or people will make introductions and because people will want to help you. People love entrepreneurs and love female entrepreneurs, and so people want to help you. So please do share your startup idea with your community and your environment, and I think people will introduce you, and from one thing the next will happen. So yeah.
Thank you for answering the last question. And I would like to wrap it up by, first of all, thanking everyone for attending tonight. And we hope that it gave you a great opportunity to understand what is it like to be a woman in power, but especially in entrepreneurship. I also want to thank the O20 team, who has worked very hard to coordinate such an inspiring event. And finally, a special thank you to, of course, our two very great guest speakers, Laura and Tessa. Thank you for taking your time today to talk to us, to your inspiring words. And yeah, if you want to find and share this event with others later on, we have recorded and it will be posted on our YouTube channel. Next to that, we have a lot of more events coming up in the next few weeks. So feel free to follow us on our social media accounts to stay up to date. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here today, and have a great rest of your evening.
Can I say a couple things still?
Yes, of course.
Great. Thank you very much for O20 for organizing this, and to all the students. Great questions. I can highly recommend signing up as a student assistant to Forward Incubator. It's a great organization, very inspirational, and you'll really see from close up what it means to start a business. And as a student assistant, you can also attend all the groups or most of the sessions that the entrepreneurs are getting from industry leaders at great companies like Heineken and everything. So can definitely recommend that. And then if you're starting a business and you want to, get my opinion on something, feel free to, reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help starting founders. Either maybe making introductions or just giving you my quick 2 cents on your idea. So that's all.
Well, thank you for your final words. And I think that's going to be very helpful
Thanks,
to
Tessa.
students.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. And all you guys, I wish you all the best. And I know it's not easy with COVID, but the end is near. So I hope you can soon celebrate again on a terrace with some rosé. So yeah, stay positive. It will be a good summer.